The morning sun was just rising over New Haven Colony when the first shadow fell across the wheat fields. Jake Harrison was drinking his coffee on the porch of the administration building when he saw it. A dark shape moving across the sky, bigger than any ship that should be visiting their small world. Jake had been running New Haven for 3 years. It was a quiet place, far from the main shipping routes. Most days, the biggest problem was making sure the mining equipment worked properly, or settling disputes between farmers. Not today. The shadow grew larger. Jake could see it clearly now. A massive alien ship, dark gray with strange curves that hurt to look at. He had never seen anything like it, but he knew what it meant. Pirates, raiders, bad news. He ran inside and hit the emergency alarm. The sound echoed across the colony, a wailing cry that made everyone stop what they were doing. Children playing in the schoolyard looked up at the sky. Farmers working in the fields dropped their tools. Everyone knew that sound meant danger. Lisa Cooper was teaching her morning self-defense class when the alarm went off. She was the colony's security chief, though most days that meant helping find lost pets or breaking up arguments at the tavern. She had trained for something like this, but hoped it would never happen. The alien ship landed in the main square with a sound like thunder. Steam rose from its hull as the metal cooled in the morning air. Doors opened along its sides, and creatures stepped out that made several colonists scream. They were tall, maybe 7 feet, with green scaly skin and yellow eyes that seemed to glow in the sunlight. They wore black armor that looked like it could stop anything the colonists might throw at them. Most carried weapons that hummed with energy. The leader was bigger than the others, with darker scales and more decorations on his armor. He looked around the square like he owned it, his yellow eyes taking in every building, every person, every possible threat. This was Captain Vextar, though the humans didn't know his name yet. He had done this many times before on many different worlds. Take what you need, leave the locals alive if they cooperate, move on to the next target. Simple and profitable. Jake Harrison walked into the square with his hands raised, trying to look calm even though his heart was beating like a drum. Behind him came Lisa Cooper and a few other colonists. They all looked scared, which was exactly what Vextar wanted to see. "We don't want any trouble," Jake said, his voice carrying across the quiet square. "If you need supplies or fuel, we can trade." Vextar made a sound that might have been laughter. When he spoke, his voice came through a translator device that made it sound flat and mechanical. "You will give us what we require, your mining equipment, your food stores, your fuel supplies. You will not resist, and you will not be harmed." Jake nodded quickly. The colony had emergency protocols for this kind of situation. Give the raiders what they wanted, hope they left quickly, and call for help as soon as they were gone. It wasn't heroic, but it kept people alive, the alien soldiers, spread out through the colony like they had done this before. They knew exactly where to look for valuable equipment and supplies. Some headed for the mining complex on the edge of town. Others went to the storage warehouses. A few went toward the school. At Riverside Elementary School, teacher Mary Watson was trying to keep 23 children calm while the alien ship landed just a few hundred yards away. The children ranged from 6 to 12 years old, and most of them were scared. Some were crying. Others pressed their faces against the windows, trying to see the strange visitors. "Everyone stay together," Mary said, though her own voice was shaking. "We're going to play a quiet game until this is over." 9-year-old Katie Murphy wasn't scared like the other children. Her father was a soldier, and he had taught her that sometimes bad things happened, but the important thing was to stay smart and stay together. She helped Mary keep the younger children calm while they waited. The Rodriguez twins, Alex and Ben, were 10 years old and curious about everything. They whispered to each other about the alien ship, wondering what kind of engines it used and how fast it could travel. Their mother was a scientist who studied alien life, and she had taught them that most aliens were just different, not necessarily dangerous. Little Sam Parker, only 8 years old, was building something with blocks. In the corner, his father was a mechanic, and Sam was always making things work better. Even now, with aliens outside, he was figuring out how to make a better tower. The alien soldiers who entered the school moved with purpose. Lieutenant Kroloff led them, following orders to secure any useful resources. When he saw the human children, he stopped. Most species the Zephyrians had encountered kept their young in protected areas during emergencies. These human children were just sitting in a room with one adult guardian. They looked small and weak, perfect for certain types of work that adult humans couldn't do efficiently. Kroloff spoke into his communication device. "Captain, we have located human young. They appear suitable for mining operations." Back in the square, Vextar received the message while watching his soldiers load stolen equipment onto their ship. Human young as laborers was an interesting possibility. They were the right size for tight spaces in mines and seemed physically capable despite their apparent fragility. "Secure them," Vextar ordered. "They will be useful." When the alien soldiers entered the classroom, Mary Watson stepped in front of her students. "Please," she said, "they're just children. They can't help you with anything." Kroloff ignored her. His soldiers began herding the children toward the door. Some of the younger ones started crying, but Katie Murphy spoke up. "It's okay," she told the others. "Stay together. Remember what we practiced in emergency drills." The children held hands as they were led outside. 19 of them in total, ranging from 8-year-old Emma Davis to 12-year-old Chris Nelson. They were scared, but they stayed together like Katie said. Jake Harrison saw the children being loaded onto the alien ship and felt his heart stop. "Wait," he called out to Vextar. "You said you just wanted supplies. Let the children go." Vextar looked at him with those glowing yellow eyes. "The young ones are supplies. They will serve a purpose." "You can't take children," Lisa Cooper said, stepping forward despite the weapons pointed at her. "Take anything else." "Take me instead." "Your preferences are not relevant," Vextar replied. "We take what is useful." Within 2 hours, the alien ship was loaded with everything valuable the colony had produced. Mining equipment worth millions of credits. Food supplies that would last months. Fuel enough to power a small fleet. And 19 human children who had no idea what was about to happen to them. As the ship prepared to leave, Jake Harrison managed to reach the colony's communication center. The aliens had damaged most of the equipment, but the emergency transmitter still worked. He sent out a desperate message to Earth Defense Command, giving them everything he knew about the raiders and their ship. The message included the names and ages of every captured child. Katie Murphy, age 9, daughter of Commander Ryan Murphy, Earth Defense Force. Alex and Ben Rodriguez, age 10, sons of Dr. Carmen Rodriguez, xenobiology specialist. Sam Parker, age 8. Emma Davis, age 8. 15 other children whose families would soon learn that their worst nightmare had come true. The alien ship lifted off in a cloud of dust and steam, carrying its cargo toward deep space. The colonists watched it disappear among the stars. Not knowing if they would ever see their children again, Jake Harrison looked at the message he had sent and hoped someone would receive it in time. He had no way of knowing that he had just triggered the largest rescue operation in human history, or that the aliens had made a mistake that would echo across the galaxy for generations to come. The children were gone, but the real story was just beginning. The emergency message from New Haven took 3 days to reach Earth. It traveled through relay stations and communication satellites, jumping from one point to another across the vast emptiness of space. When it finally arrived at Earth Defense Command headquarters in Geneva, it was just after midnight. Lieutenant Colonel Frank Davis was working the night shift when the message came in. He had been expecting routine reports from patrol ships and supply convoys. Instead, his screen lit up with a Priority 1 emergency signal. The kind of signal that meant people were dead or dying. Frank read the message once, then read it again. His coffee grew cold as he stared at the list of names. 19 children, ages 8 to 12, taken by alien raiders. He had seen plenty of bad news in his 20 years of service, but this was different. This was the kind of news that changed everything. He picked up the secure communication device and made the call that would wake up Admiral Patricia Stone at her home in the Swiss mountains. Stone had been expecting a quiet night after a long day of budget meetings and supply reports. Instead, she got the call that every military commander dreads. "Admiral, we have a situation," Frank said, his voice tight with controlled emotion. New Haven Colony was raided. They took children. Admiral Stone was fully awake in seconds. She had spent 30 years in the Defense Force, fighting pirates and protecting colonies. She had seen every kind of attack, every type of loss. But in all those years, she had never received a report like this one. "How many?" she asked. 19, ages 8 to 12. The raiders were Zephyrin, according to the colony administrators. Report. Stone felt something cold settle in her stomach. She knew about the Zephyrins. They were raiders and slavers who hit remote colonies for supplies and equipment. But they had never taken human children before. This was new, and new was always dangerous. "Send me everything," she ordered. "And wake up the emergency council. We meet in 1 hour." While Admiral Stone was getting dressed and preparing for the worst briefing of her career, the message was being sent to other people whose lives were about to change forever. Commander Ryan Murphy was aboard the Earth Defense Force ship Intrepid, patrolling the space lanes near Jupiter. He was a good officer, steady and reliable, the kind of man who followed orders and kept his crew safe. He had served for 15 years without any major incidents, and he was looking forward to shore. Leave next month to visit his daughter, Katie, on New Haven. The communication came in while he was reviewing supply reports in his quarters. The message header showed it was from Earth Defense Command, marked urgent. Ryan opened it expecting new patrol assignments or equipment updates. Instead, he found his daughter's name on a list of captured children. Ryan Murphy had been trained to handle crisis situations. He knew how to stay calm under pressure, how to make decisions when lives were at stake. But when he saw Katie's name on that list, something broke inside him that had never broken before. His first officer found him 20 minutes later, still sitting at his desk, staring at the message. The report had fallen from his hands and lay scattered on the floor. His face was white and his hands were shaking. "Sir?" the first officer asked. "Is everything all right?" Ryan looked up with eyes that seemed to burn with a cold fire. "Change course," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Set course for Earth. Maximum speed." "Sir, we have patrol orders. My daughter has been taken by aliens," Ryan said, standing up slowly. "Change course now, or I will relieve you of duty and do it myself." The first officer had served with Ryan Murphy for 3 years. He had never seen his commander look like this. There was something in the man's eyes that made him step back and reach for the communication panel without another word. Dr. Carmen Rodriguez was attending a xenobiology conference on Mars when she received the call. She was presenting research on alien communication patterns to a room full of scientists when her personal communicator began buzzing with an emergency signal. Carmen was tempted to ignore it. She had spent months preparing this presentation, and the research was important. But the emergency signal meant family, and family always came first. She stepped out of the conference room and answered the call. It was her sister Maria, calling from Earth. "Carmen," Maria said, and her voice was wrong. It was the voice of someone who had been crying. "You need to sit down. What's wrong?" Carmen asked, though part of her already knew it was about her boys, Alex and Ben. They were on New Haven for that school exchange program. There was a raid. Aliens took them. Carmen Rodriguez was one of the leading experts on alien psychology in human space. She had studied dozens of different species, written papers on their behavior patterns, and advised the military on how to deal with first contact situations. She knew more about alien minds than almost anyone alive, but when she heard that her 10-year-old twin sons had been taken by aliens, all of that knowledge meant nothing. She was just a mother whose children were gone. She collapsed into a chair in the conference hallway, the communication device falling from her hands. Other scientists rushed to help her, but she barely noticed them. Her mind was already working, analyzing what she knew about the Zephyrians and their behavior patterns. The Zephyrians were raiders, not murderers. They took what was valuable and left the rest alone. But what could they want with human children? What did they think 10-year-old boys could do for them? As the terrible possibilities ran through her mind, Carmen began to understand something that made her blood run cold. The Zephyrians didn't understand humans. They thought human children were just small, weak versions of adults. They had no idea what they had actually taken. Professor Helen Carter was at a research station in the asteroid belt, studying human psychological development, when the news reached her. Helen specialized in family dynamics and protective behaviors in human society. Her work was mostly theoretical, used for planning colony layouts and educational programs. When she received the report about New Haven, Helen realized that her research was about to become very practical, very quickly. She knew something that most people didn't think about. Human beings were not like other species when it came to their young. Most animals protected their own offspring and ignored the children of others. Humans were different. They would risk their lives for any child, whether it was their own or not. Helen began pulling up her research files, looking for the studies that showed how humans reacted when children were threatened. The data was frightening. Throughout human history, threats to children had triggered responses that were far out of proportion to the actual military value of the threat. Back on Earth, Admiral Stone was meeting with the Emergency Council in a secure conference room deep underground. The politicians wanted to negotiate. They talked about diplomatic solutions and trade agreements. They suggested offering the Zephyrians better targets in exchange for the children's return. Stone listened to them with growing anger. These people didn't understand what was happening. This wasn't a normal raid or a diplomatic incident. This was something that would change everything. "You don't understand," she finally said, interrupting the discussion about economic sanctions. "This isn't about 19 children. This is about what happens when you threaten human children." "Admiral," said Secretary of Defense William Hayes, "we need to be realistic about our response. The Zephyrians have superior technology. The Zephyrians have made the worst mistake in their species' history," Stone said. "They've just declared war on every human being in the galaxy." The room fell silent. Stone stood up and walked to the wall display that showed the locations of human ships throughout known space. Hundreds of dots of light, representing everything. From military vessels to cargo haulers to exploration ships. "Every one of these ships has humans on board," she said. "Every one of those humans is about to learn that 19 children have been taken. Do you know what's going to happen next?" The politicians looked at each other uncertainly. They were thinking about votes and public opinion and budget allocations. They weren't thinking about what Stone was thinking about. "They're going to volunteer," Stone said. "Every single one of them. They're going to change course and head for whatever coordinates we give them. They're going to offer their ships, their weapons, their lives. Not because they know these children personally, but because they're human children." She turned back to face the room, and her expression was grim. "Gentlemen, we're about to launch the largest rescue operation in human history, and God help the aliens who started it." Outside the conference room, communication officers were already beginning to receive reports from ships throughout human space. Captain Danny Wright of the Deep Space Patrol vessel Guardian had changed course without waiting for orders. Lieutenant Amy Foster had volunteered her supply ship for combat duty. Chief Engineer Carl Banks was requesting weapon modifications for his civilian transport. The response was beginning, and it was everything Admiral Stone had predicted. Across human space, ordinary people were making extraordinary decisions. The children of New Haven were about to learn that they had 30 billion relatives who would do anything to bring them home. The Zephyrians had no idea what was coming for them. The message went out at exactly 0800 hours Earth time. It was simple, direct, and sent to every human ship in known space. The transmission came from Admiral Stone herself, broadcast on all military and civilian frequencies. "This is Admiral Patricia Stone, Earth Defense Command. 19 human children have been taken by Zephyrian raiders. All vessels are directed to report any contact with Zephyrian ships immediately. This is not a request. This is a direct order to all humanity." The response was immediate and overwhelming. Captain Danny Wright was 3 days out from the mining station at Ceres when the message reached his patrol ship Guardian. He was supposed to be running routine security sweeps for the next 2 weeks, checking cargo manifests and making sure trade routes stayed safe. Instead, he changed course toward the last known position of the Zephyrian raiders. Danny had no children of his own. He had never been married, had no family except for his crew. But when he heard that human children had been taken, something deep inside him responded with a fury that surprised him. These weren't his children, but they were human children, and that was enough. "Navigation, plot a course for the outer rim sectors," he ordered. "Best possible speed." His navigator, Lieutenant Tom Kelly, looked at him with concern. "Sir, that takes us completely off our assigned patrol route. We could face disciplinary action." Danny looked at him with steady eyes. "Lieutenant, human children are being held by aliens somewhere out there. Do you really think anyone is going to court-martial us for trying to find them?" Tom Kelly thought about it for exactly 3 seconds. Then he began entering the new course coordinates. "Course plotted, sir. Estimate 18 hours to reach the search zone." "Make it 15, Danny said. On the civilian transport ship Morning Star, Chief Engineer Carl Banks was having a very different conversation with his captain. The Morning Star was a freight hauler designed to carry cargo between the inner colonies. It had no weapons, minimal shields, and a crew that had never seen combat. "Carl, what you're suggesting is insane," Captain Julie Martinez said as she looked at the weapon modification plans spread across her desk. "We're not a warship." Carl Banks was 57 years old, with gray hair and hands that were permanently stained with engine grease. He had been working on ships for 30 years, and he knew how to make things work that weren't supposed to work. "Julie, I can mount mining lasers on our cargo arms," he said. "They won't be pretty, but they'll cut through alien armor just fine. And I can boost our engines to military-grade performance. It'll only last for a few hours, but it might be enough." "The company will fire us," Julie said. "The company can go to hell," Carl replied. "There are kids out there who need help." "Julie." Martinez looked out at the stars through her cabin window. She had been a cargo captain for 10 years, hauling supplies and equipment from one colony to another. It was good work, honest work, but not the kind of thing that mattered in the grand scheme of the universe. "How long will the modifications take?" she asked. 6 hours, Carl said with a grin. "Maybe 4 if the crew helps." "Get started," Julie ordered. The same scene was playing out on ships across human space. Military vessels abandoned their assigned patrols. Cargo ships began installing improvised weapons. Research vessels volunteered for combat duty. Even passenger liners offered to help with transport and logistics. At the diplomatic station orbiting Alpha Centauri, Ambassador Victoria Lane was facing the most difficult moment of her career. She was meeting with representatives from 3 different alien species, trying to maintain the careful balance of interstellar politics that kept human colonies safe. The Galactic Council member for the Altarian Federation was expressing concern about human military movements. Ships were leaving their assigned routes, gathering in unusual formations, and generally behaving in ways that made other species nervous. "Ambassador Lane," the Altarian said through his translation device, "your species appears to be mobilizing for war. This is concerning to the Council." Victoria Lane had been a diplomat for 20 years. She knew how to speak carefully, how to find compromise, how to keep everyone happy. But today, she was finding it very difficult to care about diplomatic niceties. "Counselor Vex High," she said, using the Altarian's formal title. 19 human children have been kidnapped by Zephyrian raiders. My government is responding appropriately to this act of aggression. But surely this can be resolved through negotiation, the counselor replied. The Galactic Council has procedures for these situations. Victoria looked at him across the negotiating table and realized that he truly didn't understand. None of them did. They saw 19 missing individuals as a minor diplomatic incident, something to be resolved through proper channels and legal procedures. "Counselor," she said quietly, "let me explain something about humans. When our children are threatened, we don't negotiate. We don't file diplomatic protests. We don't wait for council procedures. We act. But the Zephyrians have not violated any major treaty. They took our children," Victoria said, and her voice carried a coldness that made the alien diplomat step back. "That violates the only treaty that matters to us." Back on Earth, Dr. Carmen Rodriguez had arrived at Defense Command headquarters and was working with the military intelligence team. Her knowledge of Zephyrian behavior patterns was crucial to figuring out where the raiders might have taken the children. Carmen had not slept in 36 hours. She had dark circles under her eyes, and her hands shook slightly from too much coffee and too much stress. But her mind was sharp and focused on one thing: finding her sons and the other children. "The Zephyrians are methodical," she explained to the intelligence officers gathered around the holographic display. "They don't take unnecessary risks. They'll head for one of their established bases, somewhere they feel safe." Commander Sarah Mitchell, head of intelligence operations, studied the star charts. "Our data shows 3 possible locations: the asteroid field in the Kepler system, the abandoned mining station at Wolf 359, or the trading post at Vega Prime." "Not Vega Prime," Carmen said immediately. "Too many witnesses. The Zephyrians prefer isolated locations where they can operate without interference." "That leaves 2 possibilities," Mitchell said. "No," Carmen replied, pointing at the display. "It leaves 1. The Wolf 359 station has been abandoned for 5 years, but it still has working life support and communication systems. It's perfect for what they need." As Carmen was working to locate the children, Commander Ryan Murphy was dealing with his own situation. He had requested immediate transfer from patrol duty to special operations, and his personnel file was being reviewed by Admiral Stone herself. The file showed a solid but unremarkable career. Ryan had served for 15 years, mostly on patrol ships and escort duty. He had good ratings from his superiors and no disciplinary problems. Nothing in the file suggested he was qualified for the kind of mission he was requesting. What the file suggested he was qualified for the kind of mission he was requesting. File didn't show was what Ryan had done before joining the Defense Force. For 5 years, he had been part of Earth's most elite rescue operations unit, specializing in hostage situations and emergency extractions. He had quit that job when Katie was born, wanting something safer and more predictable. Admiral Stone called him into her office personally. Ryan stood at attention, waiting for her to speak. "Commander Murphy," she said, "your request for special operations transfer has been approved. You'll be leading the rescue mission." "Thank you, Admiral," Ryan said. "Don't thank me yet," Stone replied. I'm giving you complete authority to assemble whatever team you need and use whatever resources are available. But I want you to understand something. This mission is about more than rescuing 19 children. It's about sending a message to every species in the galaxy about what happens when you threaten human families. Ryan nodded. He understood perfectly. I'll need a ship, he said. Something fast and heavily armed. Already arranged, Stone said. The Special Operations vessel Nighthawk is being prepared for your mission. It's not in any official registry, and it has capabilities that our allies don't know about. How soon can we launch? As soon as you're ready, Commander. The entire human race is counting on you. As Ryan left the Admiral's office, he was already thinking about the team he would need. The best of the best. People who understood that some missions were about more than following orders or completing objectives. People who understood that sometimes you fought not for victory, but for something much more important. Across human space, the response continued to build. Ships were converging on the suspected location of the Zephyrian base. Weapons were being prepared that pushed the boundaries of galactic law. Soldiers were volunteering for a mission that many of them knew they might not survive. The Zephyrians had made their choice when they took the children. Now humanity was making theirs. The hunt had begun, and nothing in the galaxy was going to stop it. Until every child was safely home, the universe was about to learn what happened when humans went to war for their young. Aboard the Zephyrian ship Shadowblade, Captain Vextar was beginning to realize that something was wrong. It had been 4 days since they left New Haven Colony, and the human children were not behaving the way captured young were supposed to behave. In his experience with other species, young creatures became quiet and obedient when separated from their parents. They would sit in corners, cry softly, and wait for whatever happened next. These human children were doing none of those things. Instead, they had somehow organized themselves into small groups. The older ones were taking care of the younger ones. They shared food when the guards brought it. They talked quietly to each other, planning things that Vextar couldn't understand. Katie Murphy had become their unofficial leader, even though she was only 9 years old. She had convinced the other children that if they worked together, they could survive whatever was happening to them. She remembered what her father had taught her about staying calm in dangerous situations. Everyone needs to eat something, Katie told the others during their midday meal. Even if you're not hungry, you need to stay strong. 8-year-old Emma Davis was scared and wanted to cry, but Katie sat next to her and held her hand. My dad says that being brave doesn't mean you're not scared, Katie said quietly. It means you do the right thing even when you are scared. The Rodriguez twins, Alex and Ben, had been watching their Zephyrian guards carefully. Their mother had taught them about different alien species, and they were learning things that might be useful later. They don't understand our language very well, Alex whispered to his brother during one of their quiet planning sessions. The translation devices only work for simple words. And they don't seem to know much about humans, Ben added. They keep expecting us to act like baby animals. Sam Parker, the 8-year-old who loved building things, had been quietly collecting small pieces of metal and plastic from around their holding area. His father had taught him that any material could be useful if you knew how to use it right. What are you making? Katie asked him. Tools, Sam said simply. My dad says you should always have tools. The children's behavior was having an unexpected effect on some of their guards. Junior Officer Silith had been assigned to watch them, and he was becoming increasingly uncomfortable with the situation. Silith was young for a Zephyrian, barely old enough for military service. He had joined the Raiders because it seemed like an easy way to make money and see the galaxy. Capturing helpless young creatures and selling them as laborers was not what he had expected to be doing. The human children looked at him with eyes that seemed too intelligent, too aware. When they spoke to each other, their words had meaning and purpose that went beyond simple fear responses. They were planning something, working together in ways that his training said captured young shouldn't be able to do. "Officer Silith," Katie said one day when he brought them food. "Why are you keeping us here?" The question caught him off guard. In his experience, captured creatures didn't ask questions. They certainly didn't look directly at their captors with steady, unafraid eyes. "You are prisoners," he said through his translator. "You will work when we reach our destination." "Work doing what?" Alex Rodriguez asked. "Mining operations, small spaces. You are the correct size." Ben Rodriguez frowned. "But we're kids. We don't know how to mine anything." "You will learn," Silith said. But his voice lacked conviction. "What if we don't want to learn?" Emma Davis asked, and her small voice carried a stubbornness that reminded Silith uncomfortably of adult determination. Silith left without answering, but the questions followed him. These human young were not behaving like the helpless creatures he had been told to expect. They were behaving like small versions of the adult humans his people had learned to respect as dangerous opponents. In the ship's command center, Captain Vextar was dealing with his own growing concerns. They were still 2 days away from the abandoned mining station at Wolf 359, but he was already receiving disturbing reports from his scouts. Human ships were moving throughout the sector. Not just military vessels, but civilian craft that appeared to have been hastily armed with improvised weapons. They were searching for something, and Vextar had a terrible suspicion he knew what they were looking for. "Captain," his communications officer reported, "we are detecting increased human activity along all major shipping routes. Their fleet movements are highly unusual." "How unusual?" Vextar asked. "They appear to be abandoning their normal patrol patterns. Ships are converging from multiple sectors toward our projected destination." Vextar felt a cold sensation in his stomach. "How many ships?" "At least 30 confirmed contacts, sir. Possibly more." 30 ships for 19 young prisoners seemed excessive, even for the emotionally unstable humans. Unless the humans were planning something far beyond a simple rescue operation. On the bridge of the human special operations vessel Nighthawk, Commander Ryan Murphy was reviewing the intelligence reports that Dr. Rodriguez had provided. The ship was unlike anything in the official Earth Defense Force registry, with weapon systems and stealth capabilities that pushed the boundaries of known technology. Ryan had assembled a team of specialists for the mission. Lieutenant Commander Janet Brooks was his tactical officer, an expert in boarding operations and close-quarters combat. Chief Petty Officer Mike Torres handled demolitions and breach-in techniques. Dr. Angela Moore was a medical officer who specialized in treating trauma in children. "The Zephyrian ship is heading for the Wolf 359 station," Ryan told his team during their final briefing. "Intelligence indicates it's an abandoned mining facility with minimal defenses." "What's our approach?" Janet asked. "Direct assault would be too risky with children aboard their ship," Ryan replied. "We need to disable their weapons and engines without causing structural damage." "That's going to be tricky," Mike said. "Zephyrian ships are heavily armored." "We have advantages they don't expect," Ryan said. Dr. Rodriguez provided detailed information about their ship design and crew psychology. "They're not prepared for the kind of precision assault we're planning." What Ryan didn't tell his team was that 30 other human ships were also converging on Wolf 359. The official rescue mission was just the tip of the spear. Behind them came a force that represented the full fury of humanity when its children were threatened. Dr. Rodriguez was aboard the Nighthawk as well, serving as both consultant and grieving mother. She had identified critical weaknesses in Zephyrian psychology that could be exploited during the rescue operation. "The Zephyrians are hierarchical," she explained to the team. "They follow orders without question and don't adapt well to unexpected situations. If we can create enough chaos, their response will be predictable. What about the children? Dr. Moore asked. How are they likely to be treated? Carmen's expression darkened. The Zephyrians don't understand human development. They think children are just small, weak adults. They have no idea how resilient and adaptable human children actually are. That could work in our favor, Ryan said. Our kids are tougher than the aliens expect. Back on the Shadow Blade, Katie Murphy was proving exactly how tough human children could be. She had organized the other children into a system that kept everyone fed, calm, and ready for whatever might happen next. When the rescue comes, she told the others, we need to be ready to help. Stay together, follow instructions, and don't panic. How do you know rescue is coming? Emma asked. Katie smiled with the absolute confidence that only a 9-year-old could possess. Because we're human children, and human adults never leave their children behind. My dad will come. Alex and Ben's mom will make sure of it. And if our families can't come themselves, they'll send someone who can. She was right, of course. At that moment, 37 human ships were closing in on their location, carrying the most determined rescue force in galactic history. Zephyrians had taken 19 human children, thinking they were capturing weak, helpless creatures. Instead, they had triggered a response that would reshape their understanding of humanity forever. They had learned too late that human children weren't just small humans waiting to grow up. They were the most precious thing their species possessed, protected by every adult in their civilization. The rescue was coming, and nothing in the galaxy was going to stop it. General Thrachter was having a very bad day. The Supreme Commander of the Zephyrian military had received an urgent message from Captain Vextar that made no sense at all. According to the report, 37 human ships were approaching the Wolf 359 station, and they were not responding to communication attempts. Explain this again, Thrachter said to his tactical advisor as they stood in the command center of the battle station, Darkspear. Captain Vextar took some human young for labor purposes, and now their entire military is mobilizing? That appears to be correct, General, the advisor replied nervously. Our intelligence indicates that humans are abandoning patrol routes across 3 sectors to converge on this location. Thrachter studied the tactical display, showing the approaching human fleet. The ships were a mix of military vessels and civilian craft that had been hastily converted for combat. By all military logic, this made no sense. 37 ships for 19 young prisoners, he said slowly. These humans are even more irrational than we thought. What General Thrachter didn't understand was that this wasn't about military logic. This was about something much more dangerous to his people than any conventional war. At the Wolf 359 mining station, Captain Vextar was trying to prepare defenses with a growing sense of panic. The station had been abandoned for years, and most of its defensive systems were offline. He had brought the Shadow Blade here because it was supposed to be safe, not because it was defensible. Status report, he ordered his crew. Defensive systems are at 40%, his weapons officer reported. The station's shield generators are functional but weak. We have 12 fighter craft operational, and the human prisoners? Secured in the lower level of the station. Officer Silith is guarding them. Vextar nodded, though he was beginning to wonder if taking the human young had been a mistake. The response from their species was far beyond anything he had expected. In the holding area deep within the mining station, the 19 human children were preparing for what they hoped would be their rescue. Katie Murphy had organized them into groups, with older children responsible for younger ones. Remember what we practiced, Katie told them. When the fighting starts, we stay low and stay together. If someone comes to get us, we follow their instructions exactly. Alex Rodriguez was listening for sounds from outside their cell. I can hear ships landing, he whispered. Lots of them. His brother Ben nodded. Mom always said that humans take care of their own. She was right. Little Sam Parker had been working with the tools he had made from scraps. "I think I can open this lock," he said quietly. "Dad showed me how locks work." "Wait," Katie said. "Let's see what happens first. If our people are coming, we don't want to make it harder for them." Officer Silith stood guard outside their cell, but his heart wasn't in it anymore. Over the past few days, he had watched these human children display courage, intelligence, and loyalty that impressed him despite himself. They weren't the mindless creatures his superiors had described. When the first explosions shook the station, Silith made a decision that would save his life. He unlocked the children's cell and stepped back. "Go," he said in broken human language. "Find your people." Katie looked at him with surprise. "You're letting us go?" "You are not animals," Silith said. "Should not be caged." The rescue operation was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Commander Ryan Murphy led the assault with surgical precision, targeting specific systems on the Zephyrian ship and station defenses. But behind him came something that terrified General Thraechter's forces, much more than advanced weapons. Captain Danny Wright brought his patrol ship Guardian in at full speed, firing mining lasers that had been jury-rigged into weapon systems. The beam cut through Zephyrian armor like it was paper. Chief Engineer Carl Banks had transformed the cargo hauler, Morning Star, into something that barely resembled its original design. Improvised missile launchers fired salvos that overwhelmed the station's defensive screens. Lieutenant Amy Foster piloted her converted supply ship with a fury that surprised even her own crew. She had never seen combat before, but the thought of children being held prisoner had awakened something in her that demanded action. All across the battle zone, the same scene was playing out. Ordinary humans in ordinary ships fighting with a determination that the Zephyrians had never encountered before. "General," Thraechter's communications officer reported with growing panic, "the human ships are not targeting our command centers or weapon systems specifically. They're systematically isolating the areas where the prisoners are held." Thraechter watched the battle unfold with growing confusion. The humans were fighting with incredible precision, but their tactics made no military sense. They were taking unnecessary risks to avoid causing casualties in areas where prisoners might be located. "They're not trying to destroy us," he said slowly. "They're trying to rescue their young without harming them. Sir, our forces are requesting permission to threaten the prisoners. If we make it clear that continued attack will result in their deaths." "No," Thraechter said immediately, and his response surprised even himself. Something in the way the humans were fighting told him that threatening their young would only make things infinitely worse. On the Nighthawk, Commander Ryan Murphy was coordinating the assault with the calm precision of a master surgeon. Every move was calculated to bring him closer to his daughter and the other children, without putting them at unnecessary risk. "Breach teams Alpha and Beta, you're clear to enter the station," he ordered. "Remember, we have friendlies on the lower levels. Watch your fire." Dr. Rodriguez was monitoring communications, listening for any sign of the children. When she heard Katie Murphy's voice over the station's internal communication system, she nearly cried with relief. "This is Katie Murphy," the 9-year-old's voice came through clearly. "We're in Section C7, lower level. There are 19 of us, and we're all okay. Officer Silith helped us get out of our cell." "Did she say an alien helped them?" Ryan asked. "That's what it sounded like," Carmen replied. Ryan made another decision that would become part of military legend. "All teams, be advised that we may have a friendly Zephyrian in the target area. Identify targets before engaging." The rescue itself took less than 20 minutes. Ryan's breach team found the children in a maintenance corridor, led by Katie Murphy and protected by Officer Silith, who had decided that his conscience was more important than his orders. "Dad," Katie said when she saw the figure in combat. Armor approaching. Ryan pulled off his helmet, and Katie ran into his arms. Around them, other children were reunited with rescue team members who would carry them to safety. Dr. Rodriguez found her twins and held them so tightly they could barely breathe. Sam Parker was rescued by Chief Torres, who was amazed at the tools the 8-year-old had fashioned from scraps. Emma Davis and the other children were gathered up by team members, who treated them like they were the most precious cargo in the universe. The battle ended as suddenly as it had begun. The Zephyrian forces, seeing that the prisoners had been rescued, simply stopped fighting. General Thrachter ordered a complete withdrawal, leaving the Wolf 359 station to the humans. As the rescue ships prepared to depart, Ryan Murphy made one final decision. He offered passage to Officer Saleth, who had risked his own life to help. "Human children. Why?" Saleth asked through his translator. "Because you did the right thing," Ryan replied. "And because humans remember their friends." The journey home took 3 days. The children were examined by Dr. Moore and found to be in good health, though they would need time to recover from their ordeal. But they had shown something that amazed even their rescuers. Katie Murphy had kept 19 children together and safe through sheer force of will and leadership. The Rodriguez twins had gathered intelligence that helped with the rescue. Sam Parker had made tools that could have helped them escape if necessary. All of them had displayed courage that would have impressed adult soldiers. When they finally reached Earth, the children were reunited with their families in scenes that were broadcast across human space. The message was clear to every species in the galaxy. This is what happens when you threaten human children. General Thrachter sent a formal message to the Galactic Council, recommending that the Zephyrian Empire avoid any future contact with human civilian populations. He also quietly ordered that all Zephyrian forces be briefed on the importance of never, under any circumstances, taking human young as prisoners. The incident became known as the Wolf 359 rescue, and it changed how the galaxy viewed humanity. Other species realized that humans didn't just fight for territory or resources. They fought for each other, especially for their children, with a determination that bordered on the terrifying. Years later, when Katie Murphy graduated from the Defense Force Academy, her first assignment was to a ship commanded by former Officer Saleth, who had become one of humanity's most trusted alien allies. The Zephyrian had learned something that day that changed his entire view of the universe. Sometimes the strongest species isn't the one with the best weapons, but the one willing to risk everything for its young. The children of New Haven grew up knowing that they belonged to a species that would move heaven and earth to protect them.